Namaste, and welcome to Acharya Shunya's podcast, Shadow to Self, a show created to inspire you to step out of fear and darkness into a place of freedom and empowerment. In each episode, she'll explore humanity's deepest questions about your relationship with yourself and others, illuminated by the ancient and non-dual wisdom of the Vedas, Upanishads, and Bhagavad Gita. Keep listening.
Welcome to Shadow to Self with a new episode. My guest today is Dr. Shamini Jain, a pioneering voice at the intersection of science, healing, and human potential. She's the founder and CEO of the Consciousness and Healing Initiative, also known as CHI. It is a nonprofit collaborative that brings together scientists, healing practitioners, educators, and artists, all united in the mission to help humanity heal from within. Dr. Jain is a clinical psychologist and an award-winning researcher whose work bridges psycho-neuroimmunology, integrative health, and Biofield Science. She also teaches at UC San Diego, serving as an adjunct professor in the Department of Family Medicine, where she helps guide research, education in integrative health. A two-time TEDx speaker and media presence, Dr. Jain is also the author of an award-winning book, Healing Ourselves, Biofield Science, and the Future of Health, which is transforming how we think about healing in the modern age. It's an honor to welcome Dr. Shamini Jain, and I invite you to jump right into this wonderful conversation that we had. Shamini, you are a mom of teenagers, and you are a psychologist dealing with not only helping people, but you are helping shape the field of psychology with your research and with your insights. You have also become quite an important voice in the field of neuroscience and neuropsychology. And then you are a leader in goddess teachings and goddess consciousness and the Vedic voice in some sense. So you have quite a few fields, but I realize that there might be one thing that's common. And one thing that's common is that you must be contending with the shadow in these different fields. What is the reality, or what is closer to reality, and what is the playing out of psychology, science, neurology, Vedic teachings, goddess teachings, the human experience, the dilemmas of motherhood. How do you see this, your whole life experience, and how do you manage to continue to journey from shadow to self, from illusion to more and more reality, and from crazy making life that we have nowadays to some kind of composure? Because that's what I experienced from you. Tell us more.
Oh, thank you so much, Acharya Ji, and it's such a pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much for taking time and space to talk with me. It's a really incredible and challenging time that we're in, and you mentioned a lot of the things that I'm passionate about, try to drive forward, and to me there's an essence to this, and the thing that makes me most excited for the time that we're in while we are confronting incredible shadow. You know, as a psychologist, I look at shadow and say, shadow, what we call shadow, is really just a reflection of our conditioning, our limited conditioning, and the limited mind. And as a Western trained psychologist, I would say we have spent a lot of time trying to examine the mind through the mind. And you can only get so far when you are examining the mind through the mind. There is a yearning for something deeper. So while our internal shadows, in a way, are being projected on the global stage with our leadership so-called leadership and things like this, it is also this incredible opportunity, invitation to turn within and explore the nature of our consciousness beyond the conditioned mind. And I think that is really the opportunity that we're being given. That the wonderful sayings, as within, so without. And so I'm not saying it's our fault necessarily that we're in this predicament. There's no blame or shame here. But it is an opportunity to say, well, this is interesting. Here we're witnessing a lot of things that are broken in our system, a lot of violence, a lot of greed, a lot of me over you, a false sense of separation that has really created domination, unnecessary domination over people, over planet. And yet we all know deep in our hearts that this is not the truth. It's not the truth of who we are, because fundamentally, what we're learning from science and the field that I have been spearheading now for many decades, standing on the shoulders of giants in the field of what has been called energy medicine research in the West, is that when we explore what we've been calling energy, or what we Western scientists call the biofield, the fields of energy and information that connect us and heal us, we stand in the truth of our non-separation, of our interconnection. And so this is true not only with us, with each other, but also within us, because we are more than our conditioned mind. And that is, I think the invitation that's being brought to us is, what's more? There's more than this. There's more than this conditioning and, this rat race thinking. We're more than this. We know it. How do we access the more than? That's our invitation, I think.
Shamini, you're a psychologist, you're a PhD from an Ivy League university, and for you to name the elephant in the room, because for a lot of us nowadays, we have converted psychology into the new God frontier, and we have reduced God into the God molecule and or the God particle. And so but when we bring in the field, when we bring in the field of consciousness, the field that cannot be arrested to a particle, because that particle can become a wave, and you bring it when it is being subjectively looked at, we are right away breaking all containers which were limiting our perception. And it is so important. And you said something brilliantly, that it's now exhausting, and these are not your words, this is my word, but you refer to something like, it's enough, the mind analyzing the mind. And so what you have opened the door to in your leadership, which is really welcome, because I see you like a bridge between those scientific giants or those voices in the contemporary age and Vedic teachers like myself, to say, look, there is another dimension to us. And you may be uncomfortable with the word soul because of its religious connotations, but can we talk about this source field, this consciousness, this amazing intelligence? And so right there has been a shadow that we can be really content with it. But I have noticed this, and you may have noticed this, that no real change happens in the human psyche and even in the human mind and in that psychosomatic connection until and unless we come into the knowingness of something amazing inside us. Like it's right there, that field of being and becoming, that field that you can describe now more how you see it. But I see it as Atman, I see it as Brahman, I see it as the cosmic mind, cosmic intelligence, cosmic awareness. And, for example, my body, not I, my body has a genetic condition that has made me use crutches at times, put me in wheelchairs at times. And people with this condition are often bedridden or, go through multiple surgeries. There was only so much you can do with your body and positive thinking. It was ultimately at the level of that amazing energetics, which is not even like regular energy, but mystical energy, spiritual energy, consciousness as energy. That when I made a decision there and then that I'm going to walk, that I began walking, that I am not going to be in physical pain, that my pain started reducing. It was almost like I reinvented myself. And so I'm an Ayurveda teacher, and I went beyond Ayurveda when I went into this experience. I can't teach it, Shamini, but I've experienced it. And tell me if you have also touched upon this. Wait, did that just happen there? Did or say you were teaching or you were singing, which I'm going to ask you to sing in your beautiful voice shortly for the goddess, like something transformed for people in your audience. And what transformed? What transformed? So am I
Yeah, this
putting
is
my
a
question
beautiful. It's
clearly?
just
Yeah.
it's amazing, and thank you for that personal reflection and that connection with the feel beyond the mind.
Yeah.
What are we talking about? How do we experience it, and how does it lead us to be more limitless, right, than we may have ever experienced before? And this is not just poetic language. As you say, it's very real. You've experienced it. Many of us have experienced that. What is it? We all have our different ways of describing what this is. Connection with divine, connection with source field energy. Many healers call it the 0 point field, from which they do their work. And, they try to train to bring people in connection with that 0 point field. If I might, Acharyaji, what comes to mind is actually what many healers tell me. Because, I will tell you, even that word healer, many of them don't like. I've given, many talks where I continue to get admonished by, my healing practitioner friends that say, please stop using the word healer because you're indicating that I am something magical and special and that I am doing the healing, but all I am doing is bringing that person back to their source consciousness,
Yes.
their divine self, their experience of the divine, the limitless field, so that they may encounter, and they will use the words, their soul, their spirit, and that connection with that source field, however we describe it in our limited language, is what facilitates the healing process. I mean, you just gave a beautiful example of this, right? And I would suggest that, yes, it did set your mind to believe that that reality was possible, but you literally tapped into the reality that was there, and we could wax on about what we're learning from physics and even neuroscience and psychophysiology about what our relationship with what we call time really is, time and space. In our traditions, as you know, there is an Akashic field full of possibilities. All possibilities exist within this field. We can tap into this field. Adepts can tap into this field at any moment. Now, I'm not a physicist, so I'm not going to just sort of hand wave around, and say, is the Akashic field related to this idea of the multiverse and, these things? Yes, maybe. The point is, there is this language, both in modern physics and in our ancient traditions, Vedanta being a core one, but of course, all over the world, even beyond Vedanta and many traditions over the world that say we are simply a part of this field of limitless possibilities. It's often when we become contracted that we are able to let go, to surrender enough to feel into this field. And so, surrender, as you and I know we've both talked about, is a really key process for us as humans here. So as we begin to surrender the mind and the conditioned mind, the mind that tells us I can't do this, or I'm not worthy of that, or I didn't get the right lineage, or I didn't get the right karma, or I didn't get the right family, or whatever the story is, as we begin to release that story, acknowledging that there's a part of our lives that in that conditioned time space, yeah, maybe we were feeling held back, and yet the field is an equal opportunity giver, So as we begin to tap into this field, which is limitless, then we too can become limitless, and we can overcome the mind's tendency to contract our reality.
Thank you. Equal opportunity giver. That's really important. And no judgment, no shame, no blame. And when we tap into the field, our Vedic source texts remind us that even the chains of karma fall asunder. Nothing can hold you back when you pierce through the veil and reclaim who you really are, the source. You are the source, and you are having an adventure, a dreamscape, where you had become this body. And I wanted to share about how when that great source field takes on a body in the womb, there is one limitation. Then when it comes out and it's growing in this body, which is under natural biological physical laws, that's one level of limitation. But then when it starts believing that I am limited, that I must succumb to everything and all the laws and never ever challenge my dis-ease, my distress, then that's yet another level of limitation. And yet, through all of this, Apanoti Sarvamiti Atma, that which is boundless is you, is the reminder of the Upanishads. And a core teaching that really stayed with me was Yad Bhavam Tad Bhavati, which you will really love, Bhavam from Bhavana. Whatever is your deepest feeling, not just thought, not just intellectual thought, but whatever is your deepest somatic feeling about your reality, which is what everybody's talking about now, is what shall transpire. That we are all living in these mini universes of our own making. And when we are unconscious about it, we create this unconscious clutter of good, bad, ugly, lovely experiences. But when we become intentional, when we remember that the source is not just out there, but dwelling within me, that I am that, and we start questioning these limitations, like I started questioning the so-called limitation of my so-called DNA. It's like, well, it couldn't be bigger than me. It couldn't be bigger than me. That's when changes started transpiring. And then a limitation came up within me about, wait, but, here is this very real physical deformity that has happened to a limb or has happened to a skeletal tissue. But then, once again, our responsibility is to keep returning from the shadow of limitation to the self. And that became my miracle. And that became my doorway between what neuroscientists and energy medicine workers and the new field of resonance across the world are talking, and what Vedanta has been saying all along. So I feel like the sages have been born again, and through a different lens, we are coming to that same good news that the limitation is an experience of the mind.
Yes, there's so
When
many
we
places to go
step out,
here.
it changes.
There's so many places to go here in this conversation. And if I might, I know that we're talking about yoga. And the question is, how do we come back to source to experience that limitlessness, right? And as we know, there are so many paths. That's what's so beautiful in yoga, right? As you have been teaching Acharya ji for so many years, there's karma yoga and the path of service. There's bhakti yoga, the path of devotion. There's jnana yoga, the path of seeking wisdom beyond knowledge. And then, of course, Raj yoga, which integrates all of them to some degree. And so when I look at these paths of yoga, what I feel they have in common is a recognition to move beyond oneself, to recognize. And when we say that, it's just recognizing that we are part of it. It's not like we are sacrificing ourselves. It's not like we're ignoring ourselves, right? We're just like, wow, I'm part of this integrated whole. If I revere the goddess as living in everything that I touch in this world, I'm automatically in service to it. I automatically move with ahimsa or nonviolence and compassion because I see myself in the trees. I see myself in the forest. I can be literally delighted and filled with energy with that connection through the bhakti yoga path. In the karma yoga path, and through our divine service, we recognize our sense of non-separation, right? We begin to experience that field broader because we're moving beyond our conditioned small self mind. We can say, this is just some examples. Now, I would say in my life, I probably started on the path of Gyan Yoga. And I'll be quite frank, and I think this is relevant to today's world, so I'll mention it. At a very young age, I looked at the world and I thought, what the hell is this world? Like I really did. I didn't quite use those words as a kid, but I said, what are we doing? What is the point here? What is the nature of being human? And I ended up being quite anti-capitalist actually in my young age, but this was even before I was a, rebellious teenager or whatever. And I was looking around at all the suffering and I thought, I got to find the truth of things. So I set on what I would call the Gyan Yoga path. I started just spontaneously picking up our Jan books, easy books like Easy Journey to Other Planets, right next to my mom's Cosmo magazines. I found Easy Journey to Other Planets more intriguing than the Cosmo magazines, honestly. But I really was trying to seek the truth. And what happened is I found myself in academia, and I sometimes joke that I'm a recovering academic. Because the way that we do academics in the Western world, and generally I'd say around the world, is we focus, we categorize. It is again the mind using the mind to understand the truth. And so that's limited, and that's really not what Gyan Yoga is at all, as you know. So as I've continued that, a miraculous journey, as my colleagues say, that what is it, the 10-inch journey or whatever it is, 1 foot journey from the heart to the head or from the head to the heart. I began to understand the magnificence of the bhakti yoga and seva yoga path in my life as well. And what I love about yoga is that there's so many ways for us to reconnect with source in this way and exceed our limitations in that pathway. And it's so joyous. I know this is from shadow to self. And I would say that transcendence is joyous. There's even something joyous about meeting our shadow when we come from this place, because we can literally come to our shadow and love it and hold it and say, I understand you. I love you. I honor you. And yet you're only one part of me.
Yes. What a wonderful conversation to have. Yet you're only one part of me. You're definitely not driving the car of my life in samsara, but you can be my beloved guest in the back seat with a child, maybe on the child seat with a seat belt to take care of you right there. Wow. Yeah, absolutely. You speak with such joy, Shamini. I could feel the smile through all my being. So one, I wanted to recognize that
Thank you.
the joy is being communicated. And and I'm glad you spoke about your journey from Jnana to Bhakti to Karma. And of course, you have Raj Yoga in your life. Because that's another shadow in the yoga world, that these are separate boxes and you have to live and die with one yoga. Whereas the true Vedic journey is this integrated yoga. You fall in love with that great presence through bhakti. You serve it through karma. You experience it within you through Raja or Upasana yoga. And then you recognize that it's not separate from you through Jnana yoga. Some of our souls who've done the work in previous lifetimes begin with Jnana Yoga pretty early on, like you in your childhood. You didn't do it intellectually, but you were having this experience of vairagyam or separation from this whole busy world, questioning it. You were separate from it, so you could say, what's going on here? What's this ruckus about? Because that's because of your past life journey. But then, it must have been easy for you to see how integrated these yogas are. And that's why I just wanted to share with you, Shamini, that in my Vedic study circle, my ongoing curriculum is 1 year for each yoga. We go through the Bhagavad Gita
Oh,
and then we
lovely.
return back. We return back to bhakti, which is the foundation of, of the heart just softening and dissolving into the divine beloved. But there are still seekers like you who are Gnani yogis from birth, and so, but they enjoy it too, but their questions are always at a Gnan level. So it's lovely to see all these convergence of souls, going through this yogic journey. And this, the joy that you had as you spoke about recognizing Mother Goddess, everywhere around you. I wonder if you would give our listeners the gift of your beautiful voice and your beautiful soul, because I've heard you chant through some of your talks and things, and I just felt a resonance that I'm hoping, if you don't mind, you could share with us.
Oh, thank you. That is so wonderful to hear, and very deeply honored and grateful for the invitation. So, since we are speaking of Gyan or Nyan, I will share a chant that is often chanted, as we know in our traditions, to the goddess of wisdom, Saraswati Ma, who I would say is my reigning goddess, the one that I was attracted to from a very early time when I didn't even know who she was. She is the goddess of wisdom. She is the goddess of arts and science, because there is no separation.
Mhm.
And she directs the flow of wisdom in us energetically. And so this particular chant is one that we often chant to ask for wisdom in our studies, in our spiritual journeys, in our performances as well. So Saraswati Namastabhyam Varde Kamarupani Vidyarambam Karishami Siddhir Bhavatu Me Sada Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Such a beautiful, beautiful rendering.
Thank you. It's she has been so formative in my life, and as I continue to deepen my relationship with other forms of the goddess as well, she's always with me, and she's so important for our times. So much we could say about Saraswati Ma and the flow of cool wisdom, cool light. Acharyaji, as you know, for the first time ever, I was able to go to Rishikesh earlier this year and take a dip in Ma Ganga, and it was so tremendous to feel the flow of wisdom through my being. And now what I recognized, and as I know we had shared, those of us who have a deep attachment to India and to Rishikesh and Ma Ganga, we may not always have the opportunity to bathe physically in her waters, but all waters to me are embodiments of Saraswati Ma and the water of wisdom. And by the way, getting into the mind again a little bit, the nature of water and what we're learning about water and its capacity to hold memory and information, and of course recognizing that we ourselves are mostly made of water, the more that we deepen our reverence for Ma as water and to water itself, the more wise we become, I feel.
Indeed. And that is why in the ancient Vedic tradition, we would not only offer prayers to the sun, but we would wade into a body of water and hold it up. And then as the water dripped from our palms back to the ocean body, it was believed that something was captured in that flow. And 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 that reminds me, you had traveled to India and you were near the Ganga in Rishikesh, and I saw you on Instagram and I wrote to you casually, take a dip for me. And then you, Shamini ji, took a dip for me. And you shared that moment with me that this one is for you, Acharya Shunya. And I felt the shivers go through me because I think you karmically indebted me, Shamini. I want to recognize that because to take a dip for someone is perhaps the greatest gift. And since that day, I didn't see you just as a spiritual colleague or a vow person out there in the world. I saw you intimately, and I wanted to just say that to you. That
Well,
I
thank you.
felt a deep connection to you. I felt such a surge of gratefulness and love for you. So
Oh, wow. Well, thank you. It was my joy. It was really my joy that in my view, there's no karmic indebtedness really, but just a karmic connection, maybe, like a
yes,
beautiful
definitely.
connection that, wow, of course I'll take a dip for you. I mean, this is what we do for our friends, right? And that's the beauty of Seva Yoga. There's no like burden of sacrifice. Oh man, I got to take a dip for Acharya. No, it's like, oh, of course I'll take a dip for you. Wonderful. Why wouldn't I,
Uh,
And this
uh,
is again what the healers will say when I'm, in healing service, I'm getting filled up by the divine. So often healing practitioners will say, thank you for asking for a healing or asking for service because in the process I am also, feeling more connected, more connected with divine, more filled up in today's times.
and talking about rivers, the Ganga, Ma Saraswati, I wanted to share something I've shared in my book, Roar Like a Goddess, that when my first marriage broke down and I was filled temporarily, I've talked about shame and the female experience, and I was filled with shame because probably this is the first divorce in 2000 years of my family's known history. And also because I was the lineage holder, there was this expectation of being better than thou and keeping it together. And at that time, I didn't realize that what was happening with me was really preparing me to be the 21st century lineage holder, empathetic and understanding, and a guide to people in this world here and now. But at that time, when I was filled with shame, I, there was definitely a drop in my light, and I was taken over by my pain body. And then as I moved on, I somewhere forgot her, Shamini, and I stuffed her in the back recesses of my mind because I had enough going on. I was enough of a package to put together and convince myself that I'm okay. But I was not. And when we do the real work of healing others, we also heal ourselves. And in the process, I remembered my Guru Baba's teachings that, the river is divine or the river is Ma because she leaves nothing of herself behind, not any drop filled with dirt or mud or fungi. She carries everything with her. And so that became my remembrance of carrying all parts of me. And then in that book, then this shriveled dog part of me was brought out as the co-author. And now that part of me comes out in podcasts and books and teachings and world stages. And this is the gift of Ma Saraswati, the river. It's like that Sara part, that flowing part of Saraswati has to be claimed by us. Has
I I am so appreciative of you sharing this story and really like this is the what you have just shared is such a valuable insight into the creative process and the nature of diving into Saraswati Ma's grace as a creative soul, which we all are, If I might, I'd love to share a little bit of my personal journey with this because I think it's
Yes,
very relevant to the shadow
please.
to self process. Because sometimes the way we do our creativity surprises people. And when the shadow comes out through the creative process, which it often does, it's part of the creative process. As you named, it is meant to be that. We bring all parts of ourselves through our creative work. And it's not an efforting thing, it just shows up. Whatever needs to show up, shows up. In a nutshell, you just heard me chant, of course, the Saraswati mantra. And my parents would like nothing more than if I just chanted those kinds of mantras every day and not much else of some of the singing that I've done, which has included heavy metal singing, really heavy, deep singing, which they don't understand. And so I'll share with you kind of a fun aside. And those, from the Indian lineage or Indian born parents will, probably laugh with this. But um, long story short, and I share more of this in my book, Healing Ourselves, my creative journey. I found myself, not by design, fronting an Iron Maiden tribute band. Okay, which ended up blowing up in San Diego, which I was there for several decades, and so I was asked to front this band. I was kind of wondering about it because I hadn't really listened to Iron Maiden, listened to the songs, as I deepened my understanding of those songs that are truly epic and, kind of really describing historical truths. So I made it a theater of the mind, which is how the singer Bruce Dickinson describes it, and went full out with masks and wings and all of that. So again, a lot of people are like, whoa, okay, Shamini's really showing her shadow self. My father saw one of those videos and was deeply disturbed, deeply disturbed. What are you doing? You're going to ruin your career. You're all about healing. And here you are on the stage, as like this dark queen with masks and this heavy metal music. And, you cannot do this. And I laughed at first, but then I cried because I realized that my father, who, I would say is the finest man that I know, really incredible soul. I've learned so much from him and my mother. But I recognized that there was this part of me that he would not accept. This part of me that he saw as a shadow, but that was again fueling such a joy and energy in my creative process. And while I was able to embrace her, I realized that not everyone is going to embrace your shadow self. Several years later, I released my first debut album as a singer. The album is called Kali Yuga Blues, and it's available on all streaming platforms. And again, I nothing I ever thought I could do. I was separated from my bands because I moved and I had to start over. And I thought, well, let me try. Let me see what comes in. And so I really gave into the creative process. And I'm mentioning this here because I would really encourage each of us to do this. Start wherever you are. Again, back to the early part of the conversation. No limitations. Just drop in and see what comes in. And sometimes what will come in is what we call the shadow, but it's those parts of ourselves that are calling to be heard. The parts of ourselves that society tells us we have to stuff away, the anger, the anguish. So creativity is more than that, but sometimes just to open the flow of the pure channel that comes through, we must open to those parts that we hold back. So important.
When I imagine you wearing a mask and wings and crooning to heavy metal, I don't know if I see the shadow there. I see the self having a lot of fun there.
So fun. I love it. I'll do it any chance I
Yeah.
get, really. And, over the years, my parents have learned to accept this part of me and, even some of my communities. So for some of my community, when I released Kali Yuga Blues, each song represents the journey through a chakra. It was not designed that way, but it just happened that way. And so the first few songs are really kind of heavy and sad a little bit, and angry too. And so they were really surprised that the sort of metalish hard rock thing was coming through me. And, the later songs like Imaginal Cells, which represents the sixth chakra and the limitlessness of possibilities. Um, Other songs have a different flavor. And mantras, by the way, are interwoven throughout many of those songs, but in a very non-traditional way. um, I honored that process and I have no shame about it. And I think this is really important for each of us in the creative process. Your creativity is your own, it is your life force, it is the expression of the life force within you, and even spirits that may guide the process of that healing for you. And in the expression of that healing, first of all, as all artists know, we do it for ourselves, first and foremost. We do it in service, but we do it because we're honoring the force, the Saraswati force that is moving through us. And it is that deep seva to creativity, really, that begins the journey.
And to deny that or to straitjacket your creativity to meet a cultural prefabricated mold is to then really dishonor the Divine Mother. It's really not the way Saraswati is meant to come through you. And so, to each our own, we have to discover the blossom, the fragrance, the quality, the quantity, the season in which we have to blossom. And then we have to guard that divine impulse within us to be the person we are meant to be. I actually really appreciated you sharing this story, and I can just imagine the rippling effect it has on listeners, because going back to like not being limited and believing in those limitations,
Yes.
it's really important to be boundless and tell these stories where probably your dad and my family for a while didn't shame us specifically, but they didn't understand us. We had gone beyond them. We had done our work of evolution in our family and dynamics and thinking and culture to bring something new. So my
They felt the
gift,
shame. Yeah.
yeah,
It's the thing. They felt the shame, and I felt sad for my father that he felt the
yeah,
shame. He
yeah.
was in India, and everyone knows me as this PhD, this scientist, this keynote speaker, this
A
author.
Columbia University graduate.
So
Yeah,
all of that, so he feels very proud of those
yeah.
parts of me. And he was in India, and as you know, sometimes people can be catty. And somebody asked him, "Oh, what does your daughter do?" And some woman just snapped, "Oh, she sings in a bar." And he felt shame around that. And I feel bad that he felt shame around that.
My
But
father
that's not my
was
shame to carry.
My father was, as fathers tend to do, telling about his daughter, and oh, she has best-selling books and she has students in so many countries. And then somebody mentioned, and she was divorced earlier on. And my father became quiet at that time, as if that was the one thing. And then I told my father, I said, Dad, my gift to your lineage, to our lineage, is this divorce. Because now I can talk about the pain and the right to choose and the journey from shame to self. This was my living curriculum.
Exactly. You lived it. And they had to some degree, live it with you. And this
Mm.
is so relevant to our times because, one, we're talking about moving beyond cultural and mental limitations, believing in our own energy and our creative force. The number one thing that I would suggest to all of us in today's times: always treasure the creative force within you and give into it, because it is in giving into that creative urge, that creative drive, whether it's to recreate our lives, to create something of beauty for the world, to create community. This is what the world is asking for. This is what today's times are leading us to, is to be creators and to be unashamed about giving into our creativity. It's so important. It's really, I feel, the number one lesson for our times these days.
And I was thinking that probably owning the vivid originality of our creativity is also connected to then being able to recreate our life stories and to
Mhm.
take them where we want with inner freedom. Not permissiveness or a carelessness or any of that, but to be the person that you are on the stage singing or making music, or for me to be writing and talking about some dark corridors of my life. We're not being irreverential. It is the most intentional and choiceful journeys that we are making. This is not about being disdainful. It's about being really conscious about the vessel that we are and to give light to all those deep divine Saraswati impulses, I would say.
I agree so completely. And, I think another lesson on the creative journey is to let go of that conditioning of perfectionism. And that's something that I've really enjoyed as a teacher. I've actually brought my wings on stage, not singing heavy metal, but singing some of my originals like Imaginal Cells and things like that. And I really had to go through a battle with my shadow of perfectionism to be able to do that. Many years ago, an astrologer told me, "Oh, you're going to be singing during your keynote scientific talks." And, at the time I was fronting Guns N' Roses tributes and Iron Maiden tributes, so I didn't quite understand how that was going to happen. And what I recognized as part of that teaching journey for me as a teacher was to just show up and say, I may not even sing this perfectly. And I'm going to get up here and just sort of do my thing and be brave and flap my wings around because I want to at the end of the talk. And I've had so many people come up to me after and say thank you because since I watched you do that, I now feel like I have permission to do what I want to do.
Yeah, it's ultimately about role modeling, living that journey rather than talking about it. It's not a performance.
And we don't have to be on stage to do it. That's the beauty.
Yeah.
Literally, by each of us showing up in our conversations with others, in our families, being authentic, embracing our shadow, moving through that creative process, when we are embodying those teachings and our joy of that process with others, they also benefit. And we don't even have to try.
So, pivoting a bit, I wanted to talk about the Jain tradition that you grew up with. And I wanted to share something about my relationship with the Jain tradition. So, my mother died when I was 10. And as happens in traditional families, a lot of us live together. And my immediate caretaker was my aunt and uncle, and my auntie was from the Jain tradition. And so I grew up with a lot of stories from the Jain tradition. And, she was never asked to not be who she is. So she ended up having the Jain tradition and the Vedic Hindu tradition both as a dimension of her life, and she became my mother in the sense of being intellectually seeding me with a lot of ideas age 10 onwards. Remember her most fondly. And then when I would visit her home in a tiny city in Uttar Pradesh called Saharanpur, her family was well off. Maybe they had land back in the days. And so they had a whole Jain temple with several Mahavira deities. And so we would go around and offer them, Jai Jinendra, and we would do all the pranams to them and things like that. So this is my sweet spot around it. And the question back for you is, because you were reading those early books also, and there's quite deep philosophy in the Jain tradition. So how has that reflected in your life as a spiritual teacher?
Oh, Jainism is my spiritual home and will always be my spiritual home. I deeply believe in the tenets of Jainism, and many of us may know Jainism for its number one central tenet, ahimsa or nonviolence, which influenced the teachings and ways and leadership of leaders like Gandhiji, Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, and more. There are also other fundamental principles of Jainism, including anekantavad or non-absolutism, parigraha, which is, I would translate almost as the law of sufficiency, really, that I think are so deeply relevant to our times. And these are universal teachings that we find in many traditions. We joke, I'm married to a Hindu. I've been married into a Hindu family now for 22 years and have learned so much from my mother-in-law and my family on Hinduism. And so my husband, who is also, a practicing Vipassana meditator, that's really his home in terms of his practice home. We have long debates on things like the metaphysics and whether the existence of the souls and the laws of karma and all that. So one can always quibble about the philosophies and metaphysics, but I think those fundamental principles in all traditions, and certainly in Jainism, give us a pathway to lead our lives. Jainism has certainly influenced even my professional work. I don't think if I had not been born into Jainism and not read those books on the subtle bodies and the energies and all of that, I always had an inclination towards Shakti and the subtle bodies. I always questioned what else was maybe in the Jan teachings that I didn't read from these books that were mostly written by Jan monks. But yet there was a tantric, flavor isn't even the right word here. There's a tantric thread, I would say, in the teachings of the practices of Jainism that, we didn't call tantra. In fact, when I was young and I would ask my parents about it, they said, "Oh, tantra, no, don't use that word." Like they think of left-handed tantra and, all the things that were really would be considered very anti-Jan, drinking liquor, eating meat, having rampant sex and, all those things are not aligned with the Jan tradition. But tantra, as you know, is way beyond that. Tantra is, to me, of course, it is a practice, but it is the alignment with the God force, with the divine force, the energetic force, and the working with the energetic force for spiritual liberation. As I began to understand that through these teachings and my own kind of sitting with the teachings, it really motivated me to explore this missing dimension in science that we call biofield science now, right? These fields of energy and information that we come into contact with through our yoga practice, whether more formally through things like pranayama practice, which literally means life force extension in English, right? Or our yoga asanas, or just the practice of the full experience of yoga, to tap into the energetic dimensions of that to bring us back into soul, to me, completely aligns with the practices in Jainism of ahimsa, aparigraha, again, because of how we described before, when we encounter the life force energy and we see it and we feel it in all things, and we recognize our fundamental non-separation with what we have labeled a tree or a bug or whatever, we naturally don't cause to harm it. So then that experience, the experience of the energy through the practices taught in Jainism or Hinduism or Buddhism or so many traditions, leads us very back to those fundamental principles of compassionate action. And to me, that has been the gift of Jainism in my life.
Beautiful. And I'm glad you mentioned the other traditions also, because I feel like something that's profound with the religious traditions emerging from the land of India, Jainism, Hinduism, Sikhism, Buddhism, and other religions. Dharma, or Dhamma, as the Buddha called it, but Dharma is a foundation. And this Dharma is not just this worldly Dharma, but it is the Dharma of the soul, Dharma of the one who is visiting this loka, this realm. So that's really fascinating. And something I wanted to share was that something that I walked away with my encounter with Jainism early on was, and all the stories I heard from my aunt and then her sisters about tapas, like a
Yeah.
yogic lifestyle, really stayed with me. The mind over matter, and soul over mind. It's a lived reality in everyday lifestyle of Jainism.
It
And that's why
really
some
is.
people find it forbidding or difficult, but it's an invitation.
I wonder how you feel about this, Acharya ji, and I would not want to say anything that is incorrect at all, but I'll just share my perspective. I don't know that this is a truth, but I feel that we can and we are engaging, if we choose to be, in tapasya all the time.
Yes.
All the time. We're
I'm with
engaging
you.
in this, whether we are conscious of it or not, because what it is an opportunity to reflect on the conditioning and choose habit patterns that allow us to encounter our divine selves. And in that encountering, in that pathway of the encounter, we are burning off the karma. That is what the pasha is, isn't it? It is just the movement toward the divine and the fiery heat. Again, I love how you described the whole essence of this whole session that you are doing with the fire of yoga. As I know, the sacred flame. I'm forgetting the exact words that
Yoga
you
burns again. Yeah.
yoga burns again. Yeah. So
Yeah.
how relevant this is, that we're always We're always burning. And so we can choose to accumulate conditioned habit patterns, and we are creating karma all the time. Good karma, bad karma, however we want to describe it, using those qualifiers. But we're also burning that flame of brightness and truth through every practice that we do. It doesn't even have to be super formal, although I am very grateful for the formal practices that we do engage in, on a yearly basis, monthly basis, daily basis, whatever we choose.
Wow. Yeah, we're coming full circle. And indeed, tapas tapas is not like we take weekends off. Tapas is an ongoing commitment. And probably that really ties well with this theme of yoga burns again, because tapas invites us to journey from shadow to self, to unite with the greater principle, the higher presence, whatever you want to call it. So this has been a profound conversation,
It's
Shamini.
been so delightful for me, Acharya ji. Thank you so much for inviting the conversation in, and so grateful for you to be doing this wonderful podcast at such an important time for people to be listening in to the truth of who we are.
I think our listeners will just love you. If you can send us the links for downloading your music, I'm going to be the first one to download that. Your voice has beauty and something more that comes and touches you. So I think I want to say thank you for just being all of you, and for singing in your important keynotes, because anybody can look at your schedule and know that you're speaking on some of the most vital platforms on World Today, and you bring in this greater truth, because I think when you sing, you can't be anything but that which you are deep inside. So blessings for your authenticity, blessings for your path as a leader in the field of psychology and touching neurology and science, and blessings for being a sister friend for me. Thank you so much, Shamini.
Thank you, Acharya ji. Thank you. Thank you.
Wow, that was amazing, wasn't it?
Thank you. I hope you got everything from the
It
conversation
was a
you touched
profound
on.
conversation, and I was just listening to you. And how old are you, Shamini?
I'm 51.
Wow, you carry the Shakti of 100-year-old
Mm.
old soul.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh, thank you. Thank you.
yeah.
Well, I look forward to hopefully seeing you in the fall. I will let you know if I make my way out there.
Yes, absolutely. And then if March is when you are coming out with something, probably March, April, May is when you're promoting things, let us know in advance how I can help, and I would be happy to.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. And
Thank you
blessings
so
to your
much.
father, smooth transitions for his
I
health.
didn't get any text, so I know that he might be sleeping now.
Good. Good.
Yeah. So
Good.
I didn't completely switch it off. I left it on the silent mode with its face open in case something came in. So
Good.
all
Yeah,
is
you have
well.
to.
Thank you,
Good.
Shamini. We'll be
All
in
right.
touch. Take care.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you loved this episode, there's a way to show your love. Just go to acharyashunya.com and make a donation to support the production of this podcast. You can also rate, review, and share this episode with others. Live on YouTube every month. Browse her online wisdom school for her latest course offerings. And thanks for listening.